You're listening to Thunderquack Podcast Network.
To Irregularly Scheduled. I am your host, Michael Cohen. Thank you for tuning in. I know it's been a long time since our last episode. I expected to get something out sooner than this, but it just didn't happen. Anyways, that's why it's called Irregularly Scheduled. You can just sort of subscribe to the feed and they'll show up when they show up. But, we had something worth talking about this time around. Kurtis and I, Kurtis Findlay, from the Pullbox podcast, we decided that we were going to have a quick chat about Doctor Strange right before we recorded an episode of Quiver the Green Arrow podcast, which he was guest hosting on. And so we kind of got into it, and it ended up being a little bit longer of a conversation than I thought. So rather than tag it on to the end of that episode of Quiver, I figured we would break it out and do it as its own episode of Irregularly Scheduled. So what follows is a totally spoiler-filled conversation, hence this being titled a Doctor Strange Spoilercast. So if you haven't seen Doctor Strange and you don't want to be spoiled, then don't listen. I guess it's that simple. But once you have seen Doctor Strange, come on back and give us a listen and let us know what you thought of Doctor Strange. You can tweet at us at Irregularly Scheduled and leave comments on the website and all that sort of stuff, Facebook page and whatnot. But without further ado, here is our totally spoilery conversation about Doctor Strange and where we think the MCU is going after Doctor Strange. So here you go. So what did you think of Doctor Strange? I know you liked it, but
I did. I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was very good. I thought it was well casted.
Yeah.
Or cast was the past tense. I don't think it was well cast. It was. It had great special effects. It was like, I felt like it was way more effects heavy than even a lot of the other Marvel movies.
Oh, for sure.
And they did a great job.
Yeah.
And I loved that he used his brain to get out of the end instead of his fists, which was fantastic.
It's the best. Yeah. It's the best.
It didn't pass the Bechdel test,
but
no, but it was still entertaining.
Not at all. And that's even with them
turning the ancient one into a woman,
which everybody's all up in arms about that because the ancient one taking away a role from an Asian actor, and it's like, well, but they did make a male. They did make a problematic Asian character,
right?
Into a much less problematic female.
So there were
Yoda character, right? Because
there were two prominent Asian characters in Doctor Strange, and that's the Ancient One, and there's Wong.
Yeah.
And they left Wong in,
yeah.
and they changed his character up as well to make him a lot better. Like, I thought he was great.
Yeah, well, one of my things was like in the comics, obviously Wong is Strange's manservant. Right? Like they use the word manservant.
Yes.
And so not only does he have a lower status, sort of in a hierarchy sense, but like also like kind of as a human, because when you refer to someone as a manservant, you're basically saying like
there's men, there's women, there's servants like women, and then there's the manservant.
Yeah,
it's like you're an anomaly.
Yeah, so to take him not only from that, and not just like they could have raised him to the level of equal with Doctor Strange, but instead they put him in a station above Doctor Strange. right? And like by the end of the movie, Doctor Strange is obviously set up to become the Sorcerer Supreme.
Yeah.
But he's not yet at the end of the movie. Yeah. Nobody calls him the Sorcerer Supreme.
No.
But like he obviously will be, because both the Cape of Levitation and the Eye of Agamotto have both like
grafted to him or whatever, chosen him.
And Wong's sort of little thing at the end of like you will wear the Eye of Agamotto again, but you know, first you have to learn to master it. We don't want you walking around the streets with an Infinity Stone. That's one of my favorite parts of the movie, because then he's like, what? And he's like, oh, you might be gifted in the magical arts, but you have a lot to learn.
Yeah.
It was really, really well written as well, like, which some people, I feel like people really like overlook that. They enjoy the quips and they enjoy the jokes, but not all of the Marvel movies are particularly well written, right? Like the Thor movies in particular are not they're not very well written.
Yeah,
they're good, they're fine, they have their funny moments, but like
they're on the low end of the Marvel Cinematic Universe
for sure. Yeah. But like I would put Doctor Strange in the same realm as Ant-Man and Guardians of the Galaxy, which I think Guardians is probably the best written of the movies. Like the dialogue is funny, but it's not too like yucky funny. Well,
I think the all of those movies that you just referred to are movies that were pretty much unknown properties to the general public, so you can play with the characters, and essentially they did that with Iron Man too, because he was kind of an unknown at the time. So they changed Tony Stark to give him his sense of humor and stuff like that, and created a well-crafted movie. But then when you get into Thor and Captain America, where you have these more established characters, they didn't play with them as much, and they were more pigeonholed to the things that had to be or whatever, you know.
And they spend so much time in both of those franchises explaining things.
Yeah.
Right? There's so much exposition in the Thor movies. There's so much exposition in all of the Captain America movies, because like in the first Cap, you got to deal with all the science. He's can be a super soldier, and then you also have to deal with the fact that Hydra are Nazis, but they're also not Nazis, and then you're bringing the Tesseract into it, and you're involving the cosmic universe for the first time, right?
Whereas Tony Stark is just Iron Man.
He's just Iron Man in a suit, and he's just trying to hunt down his own weapons.
And that's the same with Ant-Man.
Yeah.
And Guardians of the Galaxy is just set in space, so you don't really have to get into that. But
Guardians did the Star Wars thing of, we're not going to tell you what any of this is,
right?
Because the characters don't need to know, right? Peter Quill already knows where he is. He knows what planet he's on. He knows who the Nova Corps are, right? Like, he's not going to explain to you that the Nova Corps are space police. We're going to figure that out very quickly when they book him and talk like cops, right? Like, that's one of the reasons why the movie is well written and it's clever, right? And Doctor Strange, very heavy on exposition, but it's the first foray into the mystic, right? So it kind of has to be. And then the other part of it is like the exposition that they did. It serves the purpose of developing his character, because he's coming from one world into another, and we're journeying with him. So that's good. They had to do an origin story for Doctor Strange, even though I think those of us who know the character would have rather jumped into him.
That's the same with any movie, but he's an unknown to the general public, so you got to do it, which is fine. And I thought that they treated it really well. I liked. I liked his kind of house vibe that he gave off, and I also really liked, even though Rachel McAdams was terribly underused. I did like the fact that they had a pre-existing relationship, so we didn't have the romance shoehorned into this movie. They had their issues and whatever, of course, their own little story arc, but they didn't have to spend a lot of time.
They didn't have to establish it and build it up.
I thought that was great.
It wasn't like in Green Lantern where, oh well, it's Carol Ferris and Hal Jordan, so like they got to be in love, you guys. And it's like, really, because if you were building towards a franchise with that character,
give us a hint of it in the first movie, and then like obviously that movie was way more flawed than that. But that was one of my biggest problems with Green Lantern is that Carol Ferris is just her character is horribly written, as is Hal Jordan's. I mean, like they do not resemble their comic counterparts. Not even a little tiny bit, but like they're just written as like these lame one-dimensional sort of they're just into each other because they're the only attractive guy and girl in the movie, right? So.
But any first movie of a franchise is going to try and fast track that relationship, like the Hal Jordan Carol Ferris one, because it's unknown if they're going to get a sequel.
Yeah.
So they're going to try and get it in there as fast as they can.
Yeah.
The exception to that kind of is Captain America, probably because they had their larger picture in mind,
and it's kind of part of that. It's part of the man at a time element of his story, right? That he's too stupid to realize that Peggy's into him, and then it's too late, and he misses his opportunity. Well, and I mean, in Iron Man, his relationship with Pepper in the first movie is mostly business.
Right.
Like she's obviously they're obviously close, but it's not until Iron Man 2 that you start to see that their relationship is romantic.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good example.
So
and that was even the second movie was completely unknown at the time.
Yeah.
They didn't even know if people were going to buy Iron Man.
Yeah. No, they had no idea.
So that's it. Yeah.
But
there are exceptions.
No, I Doctor Strange was so good. I would put it like probably in my top 3. And it's hard I can't really like say which one's my favorite, which one of the Marvel movies is my favorite, because they're all, to me, they're all so different. I mean, like the 3 Iron Man movies within themselves are fairly similar. The 3 Cap movies within themselves, with the exception of the first one, are pretty similar.
Yeah, the first one's completely different.
Obviously the 2 Thor movies are basically the same movie twice.
Well,
not quite, because he's not the fish out of water thing, but like they're both really standard 3-act structure.
Well, I'm excited for this third Thor. That they're going to change things
I'm
up quite a
beyond
bit,
psyched
and
for Thor Ragnarok.
I'm really looking forward to that.
Okay, here's the last thing, then we'll start talking about Arrow.
Okay.
So the end credit scene.
Yeah. You mean the mid-end credit?
Or the mid-roll, the mid-roll scene.
Yeah.
Because the post-credit is setting up Doctor Strange 2.
Right.
But the mid-roll, the Doctor Strange and Thor.
Yeah.
That whole thing. I think that takes place after Thor Ragnarok. I don't think Doctor Strange is in Thor Ragnarok. Because like I don't know if they finished filming it, but they were recently in the process of filming it, and Benedict Cumberbatch has been doing other things. So if he is in Thor Ragnarok, he's in very little of the movie.
Well, I think he's in very little too. My theory is that he's in the middle of Thor Ragnarok, and because we left Thor 2 with Loki posing as Odin.
Yes.
So we don't know that Odin's missing. So it doesn't make sense for him to be at the beginning of the movie.
No,
and
Thor wouldn't know that.
And if this movie has anything to do with looking for Odin at all, which I don't know if it does or not, then Doctor Strange has got to come in halfway through or something.
I don't think that it does, because I think what has happened is that Thanos has something to do with Odin being missing, because Odin would be one of the like handful of characters that can put down Thanos, right?
Yeah.
Like pre-Infinity Gauntlet. Like once Thanos has the Infinity Gauntlet, it's going to take the Avengers and the Guardians and everybody in the Marvel continuity in order to stop him.
Yeah.
But Odin is one of the few characters that poses a threat to a character like Thanos, and he's in the Odin sleep already.
Yeah.
So, Loki being on the throne, like, there's a couple of things, because the Infinity Gauntlet that we see in Thor, which is only in a deleted scene, it's not actually in the movie, but the one that was in the deleted scene isn't the same Infinity Gauntlet that Thanos has, because they're the opposite hands.
Right. Okay.
which they did intentionally. Like when they did the Thanos, like the Infinity Gauntlet Easter egg, not really knowing that that's where they were going.
Yeah.
But then when they did the shot, obviously after the fact, at the end of, is that the end of Guardians?
When he reaches into the glove,
when he says, "Fine, I'll do it myself."
I think so. Or is it the end of? Was it the end of Civil War?
No, it's not the end of Civil War.
Oh, I don't remember, but I remember the scene. Yeah, whatever it was.
It's either Guardians or Thor.
It was Guardians.
I'm pretty sure it's Guardians. When the glove that he pulls out is the opposite hand.
Okay.
Right. But I mean, like, that's kind of being super nitpicky. And it's also talking about a deleted scene, so it's not technically in the movies. But there's a connection between the Infinity Gauntlet, the Infinity Stones, and Odin. So I think that will play into Infinity War, and I think that what will bring Thor and Loki to Earth after Thor Ragnarok is going to be the search for Odin. Because obviously, like that end credit scene basically says that, but like that they're there because they're looking for Odin.
That would be kind of a
why would Odin be on Earth?
It would make sense then to just keep that scene in Thor 3 and not have it in Doctor Strange if Doctor Strange isn't actually going to be involved in Thor 3 at all. It's kind of a dumb.
But I feel like they're trying to mislead us with it. Like I think that they
I think they're trying to make people want to go see another Thor movie.
That too. I don't know. Like I think by the time that the Blu-ray comes out for Doctor Strange, we'll have an answer as to where that is in the timeline. But I think that it takes place after Thor Ragnarok. I think that Thor Ragnarok is going to deal with the Grandmaster and Planet Hulk, and not quite Planet Hulk, but like the Planet Hulk storyline with Gladiator Hulk and all that sort of thing, and Loki having lost control of Asgard. I think that's one of the biggest things, is that everybody expects Loki to be in charge of Asgard. I think when we get back to Asgard with Thor and Bruce Banner, we're going to discover that Loki obviously not fit to rule, right?
Or do you think
somebody else has usurped the throne?
Maybe Loki has turned Asgard into the Planet Hulk Gladiator arena?
It's possible, but I think that's going to be more some of the other characters that are because like the thing with Thor Ragnarok is that movie is full of characters.
Yes.
Right? Like, do we know who Sam Neill is playing yet? I feel like they announced the character.
Oh, I didn't even know he's in it. Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
Because Jeff Goldblum and Sam Neill are going to be in a movie together.
Wow.
I don't know if they'll have any scenes together, but they're in a movie together, and it's like the first time since Jurassic Park, right?
And Jeff Goldblum is the Grandmaster, right?
Jeff Goldblum is the Grandmaster.
That is so awesome.
So I'm not familiar with the Grandmaster. I don't really know who that character is, but I'm going to assume he has something to do with the Gladiator aspect, right?
Yeah, he and his brother, I can't remember his brother's name, have this feud, and the Games Master just likes to play games, basically. So he pulls people. He's the guy that is behind the Contest of Champions, which was the very first Marvel major mini series or crossover or something like that.
Where they fight each
other. They just had to fight each other, and so he just pulled all of the characters together, and that's what he'll do for Planet Hulk. I haven't read Planet Hulk, so I don't know.
No, I haven't either, but it takes place during Civil War.
Right.
Because they had to remove Hulk from the equation, just like they had to remove Hulk from the equation
from this Civil War.
Because whoever has Hulk on their side wins, right? Like,
I don't know, they had a giant man.
That is true. That would have been an awesome fight to see, because I think that like Hulk is still stronger than Giant Man, so it would have been really cool to see that play out, because they did that in Ultimates, I think, where like he gets huge, but just like when Giant Man is Ant-Man, he maintains the same proportional strength, and I don't think it's proportional strength. Like when Ant-Man shrinks down, he still has the strength of a full-size man, right? So when he becomes Giant Man, he's not any stronger. It's not like his skin is suddenly impenetrable. If you shot him with a bullet, the bullet would go in him. It would just be a really small bullet.
And I think in the Ultimates, the Hulk takes out one of his kneecaps or something like that to take him down.
Because he's still just a man, right? So that would have been really cool to see, but it's a little bit. It would have Hulk would have broken that movie, right? Anyways.
Well, we should pick Planet Hulk Planet Hulk for a poll box suggestion.
We should. Well, I mean, we've got a little while until Thor Ragnarok.
That's true.
It's next November, right? So
yeah.
Man, next year is going to be a weird year for Marvel movies because this year we had Civil War, which was a very grounded Captain America spy thriller mixed with superheroes fighting superheroes. And then we have Doctor Strange, which is like no one else is in this movie. It's just an origin story about this guy.
I actually really like that too.
I loved it.
They didn't shoehorn like a fight with Falcon in there, which I thought it was great. The only thing that tied them together was the mention of the Infinity Stone.
And the mansion, not the mansion, the Avengers.
Well,
Tower
we saw that there. Yeah, I think they referenced New York.
There's a reference. I didn't catch it, but I listening to a review earlier today. When he's going through, when he's like, "What have you got for me?" and the guy's going through the different things, he says an Air Force pilot with the paralyzed from the legs down, blah blah blah. He's talking about Rhodey. He's talking about War Machine from the end of Civil War.
Oh,
so that's my only gripe with the movie is that it takes place. It starts around the same time as Civil War, and I think that was a mistake. I think that what they should have done with this movie is it should have been a period piece, and it should have taken, him wrecking his hands should have happened in 2008. It should have happened, 2008, when Iron Man happened. So that, when we come back to Doctor Strange...
He's fully formed.
He's Doctor Strange, right? He's not still learning the ropes and that sort of thing. Although I think the next time that we see him, he'll be pretty...
Well, if the next time we see him is Thor, then he's got a full... If Thor takes place 1 year in the Marvel movie time, then he's got another year to hone his skill. And if he learned that fast, but he has this fast already.
But that's my thing, is that if you had said that the movie started in 2008 and then it took him until 2016...
That's true, to travel the world
to
or whatever.
Caecilius, right? So he would have, there would have been 5 years of him, getting surgeries, and then 5 years of him, right?
Doing
all of this other stuff,
getting there and training.
So you could have explained it doesn't happen overnight, but the way that they framed it, Civil War happened earlier this year. This happens around now because it's snowing in New York, so it's it's winter, right?
Yeah.
So it really but that's, again, I'm being nitpicky. But that's how comic books work. That's how comic books work. We have to be nitpicky because that's where the fun is, right?
Yeah.
When they write the stories and the stories actually pay attention to our nitpicks, that's when we get the most excited, right? So, anyway.
Well, there it is. Not just a spoiler-filled review of Doctor Strange, but also what we think is going to happen in Infinity War, how that ties into Thor Ragnarok, and kind of every little bit in between. So, thank you for listening. You can head to irregularlyscheduled.com for our one previous episode. Or, it's a podcast. You could be listening to this 3 years from the time that I recorded this. So maybe I have future episodes. Maybe I don't. That's kind of the way that it works around here. But you can head to irregularlyscheduled.com regardless. And obviously subscribe to us on iTunes. You can follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/irregularlyscheduled, as well as on Twitter @irregularlyscheduled. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm @Arkwulf, ARKWULF, as well as you can follow Kurtis on Instagram I guess, I don't know if it's an but it's Kurtis Findlay, and that's Kurtis with a K. So, that's it for this episode. We are also a part of the Thunderquack Podcast Network. You can head to thunderquack.com to check out all of the other podcasts in the network. As I noted earlier, both the Pullbox Podcast and Quiver the Green Arrow Podcast are part of that network. So head over there, check out all the other podcasts that we do. And you can support us on Patreon by going to patreon.com/thunderquack, where you can get actually even more in-depth conversations like this. Our most recent one, Tim Gerasi from Star Wars The Saga Continues, he and I talk about Donald Glover being cast as Lando Calrissian in the upcoming Han Solo movie, and we talk about Indiana Jones 5 and George Lucas's involvement and whether or not that is a good or bad thing. So that is the exclusive podcast that you get through patreon.com/thunderquack, and you get that just every supporter at the $1 level and above gets that access to that podcast, as well as our Facebook groups. So I think it's a great deal. That's a change from previously, so that's a new update. But you can do that by heading to patreon.com/thunderquack, thunderquack.com for more podcasts, and irregularlyscheduled.com for more episodes of this. Thank you for listening, and we will see you when we see ya.